Stand in for His Worship the Mayor.
Croeso I gyfarfod llawn yn Cango. Welcome to the full council meeting. First item on the agenda. Please note that this meeting will be recorded for subsequent broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. The public seating areas will be in view of the camera, and by entering the chamber and using the public seating area, members of the public will be consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings as outlined above. So the first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Oh, yeah.
Mr Mayor, I have to give my apologies. I need to leave the meeting at 6 p.m. this evening as I have a meeting in Merthyr Tydfil College.
Thanks. Are there any other apologies? No. So the next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. I'll have to declare an interest in item number 10, the High Street and Retail Rates Relief Scheme. I've got a small shop, so I've declared an interest.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I sit on the board of the Leisure Trust on agenda item number 17. I've got dispensation to speak about it, but I'm not too sure if I can vote.
You're the council-appointed rep, so that's fine. You've got dispensation to speak and vote, yes.
Item 13, Chair, own the school transport. I'm a taxi proprietor and I undertake in contracts with the local authorities for personal and prejudicial interest.
Councillor Jones.
Item 10 is
Geraint.
Maybe two, Mr Mayor. Fossa France, Small Grand Street, number 11, as I'm the City Ward Councillor. And number 17, the Merthyr Tydfil Leisure Trust, as I'm a former trustee of the Leisure Trust. So, just check.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Agenda item 6, the pay structure. My wife works at the local authority, so I'd like to declare a prejudicial interest in that item. Thank you.
Andrew.
Item 13, Mr Mayor, the home to school transport, I've got prejudicial interest. I'll leave the chamber.
David.
Likewise, I'm a councillor for so on the Fossa France scheme I declare an interest as a ward councillor.
Malcolm.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, number 10, same as yourself. I own a shop, and also number 7, I hold a fireworks licence.
Are there any other declarations of interest? I've never known so many, to be honest. The next item on the agenda is a notice of question. The procedure now is that Mr Thompson will ask his questions, then the appropriate cabinet member will answer them, and then Mr Thompson's allowed one supplementary question as a follow-up. Okay, thanks. Mr Thompson. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we know, local authorities must exercise their functions under the Active Travel Wales Act in a manner designed to promote active travel journeys, secure new active travel routes and related facilities, and also secure improvements in existing travel routes and related facilities. My questions are: 1. Has the local authority provided annual reports to the Welsh ministers specifying what it has done in each financial year in the performance of its duties to provide active travel walking and cycling routes? And have those reports, which may be a legal requirement, also been passed to yourself as cabinet member for regeneration and in turn to elected members either through scrutiny committees or full council? 2. Has the local authority included in its annual reports to the Welsh ministers what it has done to promote active travel to local people and what it has done to persuade local people to walk more and cycle more in daily journeys instead of relying on motor transport, as this is the main objective of active travel? 3. Can you also say if an up-to-date and preferably interactive map that shows cycling and walking active travel routes is currently available online, as Merthyr Tydfil CBC is apparently required to produce and make available to the public through such channels as the local authority's website?
Thanks. So the appropriate cabinet member is Geraint. Are you happy to answer?
Thank you, Mr Thompson. I've got some answers for you on the questions. As you're aware, active travel is a very new Welsh Government project. I believe it's 2 years old, so it's quite in its infancy at this moment in time. And today we passed a report in Cabinet detailing 3 schemes that will be coming forward in the next year. One for the Plymouth ward, one for Aberfan and Merthyr Vale, and the other, I believe, should the third one? And is it Town Ward? And the third one was in Town Ward, yes. So there's 3 schemes there, but I'll answer your questions. Reports have been previously reported at Cabinet and up until recently been posted on the Active Travel website. All data has recently been taken down as we are looking to improve the website with planning, IT and corporate comms, and most recently Active Travel has been presented to scrutiny. We envisage once our online presence comes into fruition, which will result in greater marketing of active travel routes, that most people will use these routes. The consultation process to identify its key active travel routes was a valuable experience to raise awareness of active travel opportunities and the sustainable benefits it does bring both to the individual and the environment. Our current data and online presence is under review, and we will be looking to improve the website with planning and IT and corporate comms. It is envisaged that this map will feature as a key component with the Visit Merthyr site, showing how our active travel routes will play an important link to our growing tourism product. We also envisage producing marketing materials with key active travel routes. I hope that answers your questions.
Have you got one supplementary follow-up question, Mr Thompson?
No, thanks. I'll happy to take the answers away, and I'll mark them later. Thanks.
Okay, then, thanks. Well, thank you for coming. We don't often have questions, to be honest. The next item on the agenda, minutes of previous meetings. Someone moving them?
Mr Mayor, I move the accuracy of those minutes.
Oh, did you have a query?
Yes, Mr Mayor, thanks. It's
is there a seconder first? Sorry.
Yes, I second those, Mr Mayor.
Yes. Oh.
Okay, thanks. It's page 27. It's the Neighbourhood Planning and Countryside Scrutiny Meeting of the 3rd of December. And if you take it to page 29, minute number 594, that refers to a task and finish group which ties in with health and well-being to explore pitch fields. I think it should explain there, because I know that the chairman of the scrutiny committee actually moved this, that it should read football and rugby pitch fees, so that they fully understand, whoever's reading it, that it's the pitch fields for the actual fields that the teams play on. It can be confused with pitch fees elsewhere.
Are there any other corrections? No. So it's been proposed and seconded, so we'll take it to the vote then. Thanks. The voting's complete. It's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda item 5, again, is the medium-term financial plan 2019 to 20. I understand Councillor Barry's taking this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can feel the shivers going down everybody's spine when you hear the medium-term financial plan being mentioned again. But this is quite simply to approve the amendments from following the meeting on March the 4th in relation to budget requirement, council tax increase, reserve utilisation and adjustments to the cumulative deficit. The recommendation of 2.1 is simply to amend the medium-term financial plan 1920 to 22-23, and they've been noted. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Is there a seconder?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Right. Are there any questions? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 8.9 on page 66. Quite often we get the gross numbers, but not always the detail. And I think it would be helpful to have the breakdowns. Could we, in future, have the breakdowns of those numbers, please?
And that was 8.9, Councillor, was it? On page 66. Right, okay, in future we will, yes.
Are there any other questions? No, any comments? No, well, we'll take it to the vote then, thanks. Yes, we're having some technological problems.
You'll just have to say when the vote is complete, Mike, because I haven't got that screen. That one's not working. So you'll have to shout if somebody hasn't voted. So that's complete. So
Oh,
it was carried.
that's carried then, thanks. The next item on the agenda is the 2019-20 pay structure. Understand Councillor Barry's taking this one again.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The 1920 pay structure. The report talks the implications and options of the proposed National Joint Council pay spine from the 1st of April this year. The report covers some quite technical detail of the implication of these recommendations. For example, Appendix 1 on page, I don't think the appendix is on the report, but we've got page 129. You'll see the National Joint Council recommended pay scales in relation to the national living wage. On page 135, you'll find the Living Wage Foundation grading structure. Page 141, then you've got an explanation of the comparison of the transition from the old pay scales to the new. And then on page 143, we've got the pay scales as they are recommended in this report. Before we go to the recommendations, there's a lot of work being put into this report by numerous officers. Leanne from HR, obviously Fran in Finance, Adele and the team, and obviously the unions as well, GMB, Unison, and Unite, Kevin, Darren and Claire. They've worked very, very diligently on this. It's a very comprehensive report and has got far-reaching implications for us as an authority. So I'd just like to pay tribute to the officers for the work that they've done. Recommendations we'll find at 2.1 to 2.5. 2.1, adoption of the new additional scale points 10, 13, 16, 18, 21 as recommended by the Joint Council for an equal step between grades as a localised amendment be approved. 2.2, reduction to the scale points grade 1 and grade 2 in order to become single point grades as a localised amendment be approved. 2.3, the staff incremented on the 2018 pay structure, then assimilated across to the 2019 pay scale as of the 1st of April this year. This is detailed as approach B in the Joint Council's circular be approved. 2.4, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council enter into collective agreement with the trade union GMB, Unison, Unite in order to implement the new pay structure and as a localised amendment into staff terms and conditions be approved. And 2.5, the new pay structure and all localised amendments is implemented from Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council as of the 1st of April this year be approved. I move, Mr Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
I second, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the recommendations, which has just been read out by Councillor Barry, on page 124 and 2.4, it reads there that the County Borough Council enter into a collective agreement with the trade unions, GMB, Unison, Unite, in order to implement the new pay structure and as a localised amendment into staff terms and conditions be approved. Will, when those discussions have ended and they've brought in and signed a collective agreement, is it the intention of that being brought back to council for approval? Because I can't find anything in the report which says that.
So, no, it wouldn't be brought back to council at that point in time, because then the consultations with the trade unions have concluded. So it's the recommendation to enter into the collective agreement based on this report. So it's this report that will form that collective agreement.
Just to, I'll make it a part as of a comment, because it would be a question. Can I just clarify on page 126, 4.3, you talk there that there's formal discussions which commenced in September 2018 with the trade union locally. Should that be trade unions locally in the plural?
Yes, it should be then, because it would be the three trade unions, GMB, Unison and Unite.
Gareth?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The financial implications on page 126 mentions the apprenticeship levy. I think the next financial year will be the third year that we've paid in to the apprenticeship levy. And next year we pay in a sum of 268,000. Do we know whether we had any benefit yet from paying into the apprenticeship levy in terms of gaining apprenticeships ourselves? Because we seem to be paying in a significant sum every year. And I need to know, would like to know rather, the benefit that we're having from it.
So there are a number of apprenticeships the local authority has entered into, both with new starter apprenticeships and with apprenticeships in order to upskill house staff. So there have been a number of staff that have completed their ILM qualifications as part of an apprenticeship programme. There's a number of staff completing CIPD qualifications as part of an apprenticeship programme, and there's also an apprenticeship programme in customer services and within ICT as well. The full costings of those that we've had funding-wise, I can provide to you if need be.
That's good to hear, thanks. And those apprenticeships, or that training rather, is a result of monies recouped from the apprenticeship levy?
It's a result of funding that's been provided by Welsh Government, so it's how it's structured then in relation to it coming back through Welsh Government from the levy.
I understand that the levy is a central government levy. I believe training is devolved, so the money would come back by Welsh Government. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No. Are there any comments? No? Oh, well, we'll take it to the vote then, thanks. Yes, it's completed. That's carried. The next item on the agenda is delegation of powers under the explosives regulation. Yes. Oh, yes. I forgot to. He's coming in. So I understand. Geraint has taken this report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Delegation of powers under the Explosives Regulations 2014. The summary report is set out in 1.1 and 1.2. Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council is the licensed authority for fireworks in the County Borough of Merthyr Tydfil, with the regulation of fireworks prescribed in the Explosives Regulations 2014. In order to carry out its functions under the Explosives Regulations 2014 efficiently and effectively, it is proposed that certain functions be delegated to the Planning, Regulatory and Licensing Committee and also the Licensing Subcommittee. The recommendations are 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. The power to exercise licensing and regulatory functions as specified in Part C of Schedule 1 of the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Functions and Responsibilities Wales Regulations 2007, as amended to include the Explosives Regulations 2014, be given to the Planning, Regulatory and Licensing Committee. And I was drinking water on that one.
Oh, right, yeah. Is there a second?
Hold on, another two to come in. the power to hear and determine applications and to deal with all detailed matters applicable thereto, including the transfer, modification, variation, suspension and revocation of licences relating to the explosive regulations made pursuant to S15 of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 be given to the Licensing Subcommittee. It is resolved to approve recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 above, then the Constitution be amended to reflect the aforementioned delegated powers. I so move.
Is there, yeah. Is there a seconder?
I second, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It does refer on page 145 to 2.1 and 2.2, giving the powers to the Planning, Regulatory and Licence Committee to deal with these applications, and particularly in 2.2 to the Licensing Subcommittee. Now, having been past chair of both those committees, the Licensing Subcommittee meets on a very regular basis throughout each year. Have we any idea, has anybody got any idea how many of these applications are there likely to be? Because we're going into a new area, giving extra powers and extra work to the Licensing Subcommittee in particular.
Councillor Jones, the position as it stands, the delegated powers to officers to issue the licence. Where this report has been brought to Council is in relation to the review of a licence. So should we find a premise that we've licensed is not acting in accordance, then this gives us the mechanism to bring it in front of Licensing Subcommittee for members to do as they would with a taxi or a Licensing Act application. So in terms of workload, no, it wouldn't be a huge amount. The majority are issued under delegated authority. This specifically looks into a review.
And if I can just add there, I think that there's effectively been none so far, because what they would have to do is go to council. If you don't approve this, any one of those decisions would have to come individually to council. So it's just a cumbersome mechanism, and this is just to streamline it, really.
Are there any other questions? No. Are there any comments? No. Oh, well, we'll take it to the vote then.
He's out.
No, yeah, yes, okay then. So that's it.
There you go.
Oh, so that's carried. We'd better wait till Malcolm comes in now then. I remembered this. The next item on the agenda, agenda item 8, is change to the Scrutiny Committee title. I understand that Kev, the leader, has taken this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Change the Scrutiny Committee title. Summary of the report. To change the title of the Learning and Layskip Scrutiny Committee to bring it in line with Estin's framework for the inspection of local government services. Recommendations that Council agree to change the title of the Learning and Layskip Scrutiny Committee to Learning and LGES Scrutiny Committee. I so move.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I second that, Mr Mayor.
Thanks. Are there any questions? No? Any comments? No? Oh, well, we'll take it to the vote then, thanks. Oh, yes, that's carried then, thanks. The next item on the agenda, item number 9, Help for Pensioners Scheme 2019. And Councillor Barry's taking this, I understand.
Thank you, Chair. It's a Groundhog Day for me today. Okay, we've only recently gone through this one. Listened to what was said by members. We brought it early. We know the report. You've read the report. We'll go straight to recommendations to seek approval for what we are recommending, which is to continue the operation of the scheme for year 1920, Mr Mayor.
Thanks. Is there a seconder?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Right, are there any questions? No? Any comments? No? Well, if we take it to the vote then, thanks. So that's carried then. Next item on the agenda, I'll have to declare an interest in the High Street and Retail Rates Relief Scheme. So, my apprentice will take
Your
this.
apprentice goes,
Yeah.
that's fine.
We're going to item number 10, High Street and Retail Rates Relief Scheme 2019-2020. Consider the report, Deputy Chief Executive. And it's Councillor Barry take this report.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Okay, the discounts of up to 2,500 off business rates with a rateable value of 50,000 or less. This is an application-based scheme from the 1st of April this year. Below 6,100 rateable value, businesses are eligible for small business rate relief. The report highlights businesses that are eligible, goes into some detail. The marketing of the scheme, 284 companies have been identified at the moment to receive the application. We've taken a proactive approach about this to make business in Merthyr as good as we possibly can make it for them. I'll take you straight to the recommendations then. 2.1, the implementation of the High Street and Retail Rates Relief Scheme in accordance with the rules described within this report be approved. And 2.2, Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act 1988 shall apply as regards to the hereditament described above in accordance with the rules described in relation to those hereditments. It is reasonable for the council to make this decision, having regard to the interest of persons liable to pay council tax set by the council be noted. I move, Mr Mayor.
I second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Any questions? Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question on 2.2 in the recommendation, but it actually makes reference to council tax. Is that correct? Because we are talking about business rates.
As Mr Barry's, Councillor Barry just mentioned on there, we have to mention the council tax side of it, because money from the business rates, the pool, comes back to contribute towards the council tax liability. So it's only just for reference purposes.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I've read the report and the application form, and I presume that there's going to be a few hundred applications for this. I couldn't find any reference to an appeal mechanism. So if someone is dissatisfied with a decision, there is nothing in there. Am I correct in saying that that's it? There is no appeals mechanism there?
It's that there's been 284 businesses have been identified in the various options that you've got there, between shops, off license and so on. An application, we preempted this report coming to you today and issued the 284 application forms to businesses. We can't make the business apply. It's obviously down to an individual application, as it states on there, because it's a discretionary award. There's the normal appeal procedure within the local authority. We would follow that. If they wish to appeal against it, it will go back to the valuation office and appeal through that mechanism. But I don't know, historically over the last 3 years, that we haven't had any issues at all. The difficulty has been is getting people to apply, if I'm honest, Councillor Jones, and not the opposite.
But wouldn't it be wise to put something on the app? We've done it though, the application's gone out. But wouldn't it be wise to put something on the application if you can get one, so that they know where they have to go?
First point of reference will always be to the local authority and to the business rates officer. 'Cause the business rates officer will provide them with the necessary information where they need to go. So they would need to come to us in the first instance. The application is for us to decide whether we agree with it or not. I see your point, the point you're making, but the first point of reference will be to the business rates department, and then we can obviously guide them and in the right mechanism of what they need to do. If you wish us to put them on the website as part of the application, then that can be done as a reference, sir.
Well, Mr Deputy Mayor, there's always going to be one at some time. And if this continues year on year, you're likely to get one or more.
Councillors, what I could suggest is that if any rejection letters are put out, obviously we will fully explain the appeals process within that, but it's a fair point. We'll look at it for future years.
Any other questions?
I knew there was something else. On page 160, when we are talking about provision of the following services to visited members of the public, top of the page there, first dot, it says car hire. I presume that's simply car hire, and it doesn't refer to anybody who's hailing a taxi.
No, sir, it is to do with car hire establishments as a business, not as individual taxi rank.
Any other questions? Any comments? Councillor Geraint Thomas.
I think it's really good news for our high streets throughout the borough. It's going to make the small businesses and the small shops competitive, and I think it just shows how Merthyr Tydfil is open for business. So well done, everyone.
Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, I echo that, Mr Deputy Mayor. It is good news for the High Street and for the retail outlets in Merthyr Tydfil, and I'm very pleased to see this Welsh Government grant funding being taken up by the local authority, as I knew they would anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, do you have a... Councillor Jones, do you have... No. Thank you. That's complete. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, agenda item 11, is the Fossa France Small Grants Scheme for Cyfarthfa Ward allocation. I understand the leader's taking this one.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Fossa France Small Grant Scheme, Cyfarthfa Ward allocation 2018 to 19. Summary of the report is as follows. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the issues preventing the distribution of the remaining funds in the Fossa France Small Grant 2018 to 19 by the current ward councillors at the Cyfarthfa division. The recommendations are as follows. The placement of remaining funds for Cyfarthfa Ward's allocation of Fossa France Small Grant Scheme 2018-19 in abeyance until the election of the new Cyfarthfa Ward councillor be approved. I so move.
Seconder?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions? No. Are there any comments? No? Oh, we'll take it to the vote then, thanks. Oh, that's complete and carried, thanks. The Next item on the agenda, item number 12, Regeneration and Public Protection Services Compliance and Enforcement Policy. So, I understand Geraint is taking this report.
Let me get on my screen now first. Now.
Oh, sorry.
I'm paperless. Right, here we are. Right, Regeneration and Public Protection Services Compliance and Enforcement Policy. The summary of the report is set out between 1.1 and 1.3. The Council has a considerable number of statutory duties to discharge and powers to exercise in connection with the services within Regeneration and Public Protection Services. In exercising its compliance and enforcement role, the Council is not acting on behalf of any individual, but is acting in order to promote a wider public interest. The Regeneration and Public Protection Services Compliance and Enforcement Policy is intended to lay down the policy of the authority in relationship to the regulatory role, both civil and criminal, of the services within Regeneration and Public Protection Services. Following review, this version is an update of a policy first approved by Council in March 2013. There are no significant changes and the principles within the policy remain the same. So I'll state the recommendations of 2.1. The Regeneration and Public Protection Services Compliance and Enforcement Policy be approved. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder?
I second, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? Oh, we'll take it to the vote then, thanks. Oh, the vote's complete and carried, thanks. So the next item on the agenda, agenda item 13, we'll just wait. Agenda item 13, home to school transport. I understand Geraint's taken this one as well.
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Due to our deputy, well, she's my beautiful assistant, really. I had to leave the meeting to go and investigate an area of land up in Garranant. So we'll keep that to another occasion. Right, so we got home to school transport. The summary report is set out between 1.1 and 1.3. The report proposes changes to the current home-to-school transport service for pupils in mainstream education. The options for change are summarised below. Based on the principle of providing high-quality education in the borough of Merthyr Tydfil for Merthyr Tydfil children, a business case, this is in Appendix 1, has been developed that appraises three options. 1.2.1, Option 1, the service remains as is. 1.2.2, Option 2, streamline the service so free home-to-school transport is provided for children attending schools within the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough, including Ysgol Gyfun Reader Wine for Welsh Medium and St John Baptist Church in Wales High School for Faith. 1.2.3, Option 3, streamline the service so free home-to-school transport is provided for children attending schools within the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough, including Ysgol Reader Wine for Welsh Medium. 1.3, on the 26th September 2018, Council approved the start of a public consultation exercise regarding the above options for the provision of home-to-school transport. This report details the outcome of the 12-week consultation, which is in the report, and everybody should have read it by now. So I'll go straight to the recommendations in 2.1. In noting the debate and the content of this report, Option 2 be approved for the reasons set out in the report, taking into consideration the advantages and disadvantages of each option, the financial implications and the public consultation feedback. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
I second, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Are there any questions? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a number of questions. First of all, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, out of interest, for how long have we been providing free school transport to schools outside the county borough? Because some of them have been quite a number of years. Can you tell us how long?
In terms of Lewis Boys and Girls, we can go back to 2003 when the responsibility for school transport came over from education. So in terms of our directorate, when we've looked back, it's back to 2003. I think it was historical over from Miglamorgan days in 96 when we came over, that it was classed as the nearest suitable school in Miglamorgan terms, but then the policy wasn't updated since then.
Thanks. Can I move on to the financial implications? And for option 2 and option 3, there are savings over the years. But I think I'm right in saying that the full savings are not going to be realised for 5 or 6 years. They'll be phasing. So, number 1, is that correct? And number 2, is there any way of telling us year-on-year savings from year 1 up to year 5 or year 6, whenever the savings will take effect?
You're quite right, it's 23-24, the actual we will cease to provide transport, subject to obviously Council's decision this evening. In terms of year on year, the difficulty we're going to have is new students who enrol to these schools this September will be the first start, and we'll have to see those through their school journey up to 23-24. Looking at page 224, that will outline in the business plan the number of students attending each school. There is a likelihood that St Michael's RC Pontypridd will fall before 23-24, so on that basis we could realise those savings sooner, but that could be turned on its head if come September we have a new student wishing to go to that school. So it's dependent on the September intake. If no new pupils opt to go to that school in September, then potentially that could come sooner in terms of financial savings.
Thanks. And on the financial aspect still, when we work out the savings, are we taking into account any possible extra funding for the schools in Merthyr, or, because that, from reading the report, that is not guaranteed, so is that being factored in or not?
The figures that are presented in the report are purely the transport figures. They're not against any potential increase in revenue due to pupils' numbers, so they are purely for the school transport purposes.
So this will be probably for Sue. Is it correct it could be positive financial impact but also negative? Because I'm sure I read in the report somewhere that it's not guaranteed by having extra pupils going to schools, we'll have extra income to cover it.
Yes, it's what happens really is that it just compares really with all the Wales averages as well. So they'd have a look at all the indications for all the authorities in Wales, because it's the same sliced cake, it's just the same cake, it's just how it's sliced up in a different way. So we can't really say that at this present time because we don't know what the actual impact will be in just other authorities.
Last question, Mr Mayor, and I'm looking at page 228 on consultation process. And if you read the third paragraph down, it says, looking at the results above, we can see option 2 was the most preferred. When we take into account the first 2 votes of people, well, from my uneducated eyes looking at it, am I right in saying that the people's first choice, if they cast 1 vote, is 39.2% wanted to do nothing, and 32.9% went for option 2, because I'm not aware that we work in a single transferable vote system yet in this county borough.
When we went to consultation, it was asking for consideration for first choice, second choice, third choice, and then on the basis of those answers, coming up with what would be the preferable option across all 3. But
the first choice was option 1, do nothing.
In terms of, yes, the public option, as you say, option 1, received the most votes in terms of the priority to remain as is. But if you look at option 2, obviously across the board, in relation to second choice, that received 54%. So we take a cross-section across rather than first past the post.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got 2 questions, with your permission. My understanding is that the law says that secondary school pupils are entitled to free transport to their nearest suitable school. As pupils at the bottom end of the valley who attend Lewis schools are already attending their nearest suitable schools, shouldn't their funding continue by law?
In terms of the learner travel measure, it states that it's for the local authority to set what they consider to be the nearest suitable school. Up until now, that has not been defined, so it's been based on distance criteria. This report seeks to redefine that to state that the nearest suitable school is within the County Borough's local education authority. The students who are currently attending Lewis Boys and Girls and will seek to attend from September will have their transport protected throughout their school journey, and this will apply following approval by Council for the year 2021.
It's a matter of principle, not about protecting the current situation. And it would be difficult for the authority to make out that the Lewis schools were not the nearest schools, and also that they were not suitable. But my second question, Mr. Mayor, thank you. With reference to the consultation, questionnaires were sent out to schools within the borough, but not to schools affected by the proposed changes. Is it not the case that, having already deprived those families of a proper consultation, the authority is now seeking to deprive them of their legal entitlement, or, if not the legal entitlement as you see it, at least within the spirit of the law? Thank you.
In terms of the consultation, we were obviously looking at future students, and that was the purpose of all primary schools who would be subject to feeding into a comprehensive school. That's why the questionnaire went to those particular schools. Obviously, the students who are already receiving education at the out-of-county schools, again, they would be protected, so any change of policy wouldn't have an effect to those existing students. So we were looking at tomorrow's children who may choose these out-of-county schools. We saw those as the relevant party to consult with.
So it was a deliberate decision then, Mr. Mayor, to omit the families of the pupils of the schools which would be affected by this?
No, the primary schools, which would be the feeder schools into these schools, they have been formally consulted, but the students who are currently attending Lewis Boys and Girls, for example, they would be unaffected by any result from Council's decision today. So we have consulted with the future parents of children who will be attending these out-of-county schools.
Gareth Richards, yes.
Mr. Mayor, with regards to the point that Paul just made there, would that have included the Nelson schools, which often would feed into the Lewis schools, and would be pupils living within the county borough, going to Nelson, but then perhaps go on to Lewis schools?
The consultation would have taken with the primary schools within Merthyr, so no, we wouldn't have consulted with schools out of Merthyr.
My further question is in relation to option 2. The saving after 5 years or whatever is £80,000. Is that a gross figure then? Because if the option were to be approved, looking at the number of pupils, there would be extra transport costs from the lower part of the borough, for example, to the schools which were in the borough.
Quite right, Councillor Richards. In terms if the same level of pupils came through the system, once we stop the free transport to Lewis Boys and Girls, the nearest suitable school would be Avontaff. We've assessed our current transport provision from Lower Valley, and we believe that it would be able to be absorbed within the current transport provision, but that is subject obviously to the numbers that come through in future. The difficulty we've got with school transport is we can give you the figures as of today, but in terms of future figures for 2023-24, in the interim we're going to have a re-tendering process for those contracts. So again, that price could fluctuate dependent on the tendering process. So we can give you the figures as is today, what we're paying, and a projected saving. But obviously that is determined on factors between now and 23-24 in terms of a re-tendering process.
Paul, so I'm clear, with regards to what you've just said then, with regards to the Lewis, I take the Lewis schools, that the 96 pupils currently could go on the Lower Valley buses at the moment?
On the review that we've taken place up until now, yes, there's two large coaches that go from the Lower Valley at the moment to Avontaff, and based on the figures who currently are transported on there, we would be able to achieve that.
Right. Are there any other questions? Councillor Carter?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Gareth asked my question, but I'm just want a little bit of clarity, Paul, if you don't mind. If there's 96 pupils which are going to Lewis Boys and Lewis Girls School at the moment, it'd be interesting to see how many coaches then are actually going from the lower part of the valley. If you say there's 96 spaces on these coaches at the moment.
The difficulty we've got with the Lower Valley is the turning circle in relation to north coming to South Bedlinog. So what we've got is a north transport and a southern transport coming from North and South Bedlinog. We can go up to 70-seater coaches. So in relation to retendering to absorb these students within that, we're satisfied that on current figures we would be able to do that.
Oh, Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe that the reason transport was provided to Lewis Boys and Lewis Girls Schools was that they are same-sex schools, which are not provided for anywhere else in the borough. Can you confirm that or otherwise, please?
In terms of the transport policy, there is no reference to single-sex schools. So historically, the only way we can look back is potentially it's based on the nearest suitable school, other than the fact that they are single-sex schools. So I believe historically that's been provided on the basis it's the nearest suitable in terms of mileage, as opposed to it being a specific single sex, unless obviously the choice of the parent might have been on the basis of it being single sex, but it was actually determined on the suitability in terms of mileage distance.
I would beg to differ with you. I believe that a lot of it was because of that funding was put forward for it because they were same-sex schools, and yes, it was a choice of the parents in the south end of the borough.
I'll bow to the comments you've made. I can only refer to the current policy, and the current policy does not provide for single-sex schools. So on looking at the current policy, I can only make the determination that that decision in time must have been made on distance criteria, but I will obviously bow to your knowledge on it previously. If that was the purpose, then it was made outside policy.
Any other questions? No. Any comments? Oh, Chris Davis.
Mr Mayor, I think in the absence of the Cabinet Member for Education, I'll just say a couple of things. I appreciate what Councillor Thomas has said about the spirit of this in terms of obviously, engaging, but there's some fundamental issues for us here. The driver isn't wholly behind this in terms of financial, but it's about us acting as County Borough Councillors in terms of looking at the sustainability of our schools in Merthyr Tydfil. And the key thing is that, falling numbers, I'm sure Scrutiny Committee and obviously Sue can bring figures to members of the numbers of surplus places in our schools. We have a duty here to act in the best interest of this county borough as County Borough Councillors, and that's sometimes taking difficult and unpalatable decisions. We've got to be sustaining our schools in Merthyr Tydfil. Parents have a choice if they want to take their children and young people to other schools. That's a choice they exercise, and obviously they have to pick up the costs associated with that, but we've got to act in the best interest of this borough and sustaining our county borough schools.
Darren?
Yeah, if there are no further comments, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the recommendation in favour of option 1 rather than option 2. This was discussed at great length at our group meeting last night, and as you can tell by the questions that have been put forward this evening, that is quite a motive subject. So I'd like to move that amendment to the recommendation, please.
Is there a seconder to the amendment?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions about the amendment?
It's option 1, is it? As it is.
No, option 2 is now.
No, option 1 is the amendment as it is. No change at all.
The amendment that's been moved is that you vote in favour of option 1 as set out in its entirety. Yeah.
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I'm a bit disturbed, really. This report has gone through 2 scrutiny committees in this council, right? It's gone through Laceskip, it's gone through regeneration, and I sat in the regeneration meeting, and I think only one of those questions was raised, and it was on about the cost. You know, the saving that we'd make. If I'm right, Paul, I think that was right. One question was asked about it, right? So it's gone through all that council process, all that council time. We've come to the chamber tonight, and we're back to square one. I'm really, really disappointed.
No, is that a question or a comment? Oh, well, we go on to comments now then, if there's no more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Thomas. I'm disappointed that we don't seem to want to support our schools in our borough. We've got an amazing school in Avontaff. We should be supporting our own schools, sending our pupils there. If people want to send their schools to their pupils to Lewis School, we're not taking that option away from them. We're just saying that you've got to pay for it yourself, unfortunately, in the current financial situation. So let's get behind our own schools and support Avontaff.
Oh, Councillor Carter.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of words from myself. I don't think it's a case of not wanting to support our schools in our county borough. I think there's a lot more to it than that. And I'm sure the residents of Bedlinog would appreciate Malcolm's support, especially if there's a lot of pupils, 46 and 47, 90 odd pupils, going from that area over to Lewis Boys and Girls School.
Are there any other comments? Oh, Councillor Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. And I was in one of those scrutiny committees, and I'm the one who asked the question of the finance. And I'll be perfectly honest, I hadn't read the report in its entirety properly. I thought I had. And this afternoon I was skimming through it, and I actually looked. And bearing in mind all that's been said about consultation over the last 18 months or so, and we must listen to the people. And I glanced at the consultation, and the wish of the people on their first votes is to say, as we are. We've always bragged about we listen to the people, we do what they say, well, let's do it.
So, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm amazed at what's going on here. Did the opposition party worry about this a couple of years ago when they just stopped the buses? So all the schools in the borough, did you care about it then? No.
Okay, well, we'll take it, the vote. We'll take vote on the amendment first. So, do you want to repeat the amendment?
So if you can all just be clear that what you are now voting on is the amendment, which is that you support option 1. So can you say you are in favour, abstaining or against approving option 1? And if you can vote, please.
The next item, number 14. It's going to be withdrawn. I'll just wait for them to come back. John's got a bad knee, so we'll wait a minute for him. The next item, item number 14, the Capita 1, hosting and technical support. Because we're awaiting further information, we've decided to defer this item tonight. Okay, so item number 15 is an information report only, and it's been recommended that item 16 be discussed in private. So would someone like to move section 100?
I'll move section 100, Mr Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, second, Mr Mayor.
If you could vote on the exemption. Thanks.
Councillor Harvey Jones, please. Can you vote on the exemption?
No. Well, I've got no other urgent business and I haven't had any communication, so that's the end of the meeting then, thanks.